Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. The No Brain Podcast. We're back here, and I know you guys are thinking, who the f*** is this guy? Well, guys, this is another one of my friends. He doesn't look similar to the other co-host. That dude is a little bald. This man's here with a full head of hair. His name is Scotty. Welcome yourself.
What's going on, everybody?
Yep. Tell him who
for
you are.
having me.
Tell him essentially who you are, what you stand for, what your morals are, so we can all prosecute you in the comments.
All right. Well, I met Landon my freshman year of high school. And he hated me, and I think I hated him just
we hated
as
each
much.
Other equally. This dude, I think you guys can all feel this. So in PE in high school, or maybe in middle school or preschool, whenever you started PE, maybe your school is crazy. There's always that one tool bag who just wants to try his heart out. That was this man.
I was competitive. I don't know. I did give my effort and everything, right?
He did put his full effort in, so I respect that. I respect the hell of that. What we were talking about, though, so again, this guy's name's Scotty. I will be bringing him, and he might be the main show. This might be the main show, guys. If he doesn't get on, we're going to have to shut this podcast down, so you guys better be hoping. So what we were talking about before was, again, philosophy and kind of your thought process behind finances, and you were going on with your philosophy class, so I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I was kind of going on about how in my philosophy class I learned about we were talking about Socrates, and I read this dialect, the Euthyphro, and it was between Socrates and Euthyphro, and it was in front of a courthouse. And Socrates asks Euthyphro like why he's there, and he goes on to say he's accusing his father of murder. And it brings up a conversation. Yeah, I know. But that's what this goes into.
Okay.
Because it talks about piety and impiety, which this is all stems from Greek like Greeks.
Right.
So they lived in Athens, and basically piety means holy to the gods. In Greece, they worship the gods Zeus, Kronos, and so Socrates hears what he's saying, and he questions if he actually knows the definition of piety. And so how I was relating this to what we were talking about finances or how people talk to each other is the way Socrates approaches conversations, especially as a philosopher. He goes into it. There's a lot of irony in the conversations because he goes into it acting as if the other person knows everything, and they're all almighty wise of the conversation.
Right.
And he breaks it down as the conversation goes on with these questions, and they don't have the answers to him, which kind of goes into a conversation we had the last time I was here about how a lot of people have big egos and they think they have all the knowledge in the world. Everybody thinks they know what's right.
And that's a good thing to talk about, because I feel like most people struggle with that. It's just something that's not really brought up because ego is always seen in a negative connotation, and I feel that it's something that's vulnerable. Like you don't want to talk about your ego. You don't want to talk about the problems you have with your ego, because the best thing in life is to feel like you have full control of your ego, because then that builds up your confidence. But as we've found out through the process of life, your ego is just something. There was a book that I was reading called The Happiness Hypothesis, and it talked about how essentially what you are as a whole is you're like an elephant with a rider. The elephant is eventually going to pull you wherever it wants to go, but the rider's just trying to hold on and direct it. And it's kind of like your mind to your ego and your body. Like you want to direct everything you're doing, but your emotions and everything kind of takes over, and it's hard to find that balance and find that control of it. So I'm curious to know how you've fought back your ego and what steps you've taken to kind of gain better control of it.
So I think that I'm going to keep bringing up philosophy a lot, just
which is
because
great, 'cause I want that. I think that's really, really good. So go ahead.
So with philosophy, we've been learning about Socrates a lot to start the class, and Socrates actually didn't write anything down. He never wrote anything. Plato was his teacher, Socrates was Plato's teacher. Okay. So Socrates' philosophy spoke through Plato, and so a lot of Plato's earlier works were more analytical, which comes from Socrates' thinking, rather, where Plato was more theoretical thinking. And so Socrates kind of
Socrates he liked them in a sexual way.
Yeah, he liked them in a sexual way, dude. It was kind of weird. I don't know. No, but Socrates, he says that Oh man, I'm fucking spacing.
Well, guys, no.
I'm
Essentially,
spacing.
Socrates told Plato. He said, "Listen, dude, if you don't get your fucking fingers out of my grub, I'm gonna take you downtown." And that's where the whole world kind of came into. World War I was started because again, Socrates, Socrates harpooned Plato, and it was a crazy time. That's exactly what happened. At least what I remember.
Okay, sorry. Back on
Back
topic.
to the real
I
topic.
had to process everything back through.
Oh,
but
no, I held them on.
to help my ego or whatever, Socrates kind of says how he was known as the wisest man in Athens, and the question he asked himself when he was told that was, "What is wisdom?" And so he went around talking to these people. This actually helps me a lot because it gives me new perspective, and I think perspective is a good way to kind of keep your ego and your emotions in check, because when you have perspectives from other people, you realize that your world isn't everything.
Right.
So when Socrates goes around and he talks to these politicians, mainly politicians, and he learned that they aren't as wise as they think they are, and they think they have all the knowledge, but really they don't. And when he asks them these questions, they just fumble and get mad and angry at him because he's asking them reasonable questions.
Yeah.
And so he also talks to like craftsmen who have a certain skill, right? So, but he then came to realize just because you're skillful in this one thing doesn't mean you can do everything. Obviously,
Right. Universally smart.
Yeah, and then he also talked to poets who are very good with words, right? But then when he talks to them, they can't even explain their own words. So he realizes that everybody. This is how it relates to me, because I can see the bigger picture of these things, or of this, and whatever. So when he asked them these questions, dude, I don't know where I'm going with this. I don't know where I'm going with this.
No, I think you brought up another good point. These are great points that you're bringing up, because again, what I thought when I was growing up is that one person who was smart was universally smart in all things, and that's one big thing that I've realized growing up is certain people you shouldn't ask for advice. There are certain people that I thought were smart, and I asked them for advice, and I see now that in that past I shouldn't have asked those people for that certain advice. Like I should have paid more attention to exactly who I was asking the advice to, because again, like you said, most people don't have enough time in their life to become universally smart, and they can't comprehend everything. And so you really have to be certain on who you're asking for certain advice on. And that, again, like that's just something that I really was. Well, it was profound to me when I learned that was something that was true.
100%. Because when you go into conversations with people, I mean, especially if you don't know them, the best way to go into the conversation is just seeing both sides of the story and figuring out why they think this. And that really just it comes down to like just betterment of knowledge and learning every single day and learning more or whatever, bettering yourself. Because the more you know, the more happiness you have in yourself, and the more, because you find better conversations with people, because you can express your words more fluently, and you spark interest in people, you spark questions, and then in turn those people that you're talking to spark interest as well. So then their life possibly can change. So you can change people's lives through just conversation, and which in turn helps you feel better because you're changing this person's life.
Yeah, when you talk about conveying emotions, there was a list that I read. I think it was like 1 to 5, and it was a questionnaire from people who were elders who were 80 and up and were soon to dying, or hopefully not soon to dying, but close to the age that people usually die at.
Yeah. Of
so
course.
They asked him what 5 things that they wish they did more, and one of the 5 was they wish they expressed their emotions more. And I wonder, is it because they had trouble expressing their emotions and they didn't want to be judged, or I wonder what the exact motives were to drive them to not express their emotions, or to, I wonder if it was maybe vocabulary problems, or they just didn't understand exactly how to, or if they just didn't want to. Right. I wonder what it was. And I wonder the specific reason.
Yeah, so you mentioned how, especially in older generations, or because you're saying when they were on their deathbed or whatever, I feel like as times have progressed, we've been able to like have less judgment, if that makes sense. Things are a lot more open now than they used to be. And I feel like when say like 1930s, or if you did have an opinion about something, there were more harsh consequences for how you felt. And so you kind of kept those to yourself, and as times go on, you kind of also see that it changes. Say like Russia, when they were in the Soviet Union, in a communist state, they did everything for their citizens. In a sense, they had these complexes where every single citizen lived just on top of each other, just these community homes,
terrible.
right? Yeah. And then when the Soviet Union fell, those people aren't living there. Those buildings are completely vacant now, and they have nothing, and they're expected to change with times, but they grew up in that time period, so they only know that, right? So it just comes into they haven't been able to adapt or really change as time's gone on.
My closing statement would be, that's the consequences of communism, ladies and gentlemen.
Communism's a bitch.
Have a great day, you guys.